Hi, welcome back to the Ekklesia, which is the called out, and we are the called out, talking about the chosen with the staff of the church at 434, and we are offering our take and commentary,
Our 2 cents.
for what it's worth, on episode 1 of the series, The Chosen, I Have Called You by Name, and this is another installment in an ongoing series where we're kind of tracking along and kind of doing a deeper dive, if needed, into the series that is that people are watching and talking about. And in this particular episode, we're going to talk about, in episode 1, I've called it by name, we're talking specifically about the moment or moments in the first episode that stood out to you. Now, again, we did kind of get into that in talking about the characters a bit, and we can repeat that if we want to, but what are the moments that kind of stand out to you guys from episode 1? We did a summary last time, but what?
I'll go. For me, it's when he called Mary Mary, because she had been called Lilith. And of course, that goes back again to great storytelling, because we open with her learning this verse about, you called me by name, you've redeemed me. And she's like, how do you know that? Nobody calls me that, but he does, because he knows her name and he's come to redeem her.
Yeah. Very powerful.
That was a very powerful moment.
Yeah, it is. Did you cry?
I did. Bawled like a baby.
Okay. Just checking.
Mine wasn't as much powerful as it was funny.
Did you cry?
I didn't cry.
He laughed. It was funny.
It was funny. I love when Matthew is trying to get the cart guy.
Oh, yeah.
I just think it's hilarious with the cart guy going, I'm taking you no further. I got to live with these people. You know?
Yeah.
And to watch Matthew sort of get out and have to skulk about and, you know.
Well, even getting in, doesn't he say something about hauling the biggest pile of dung?
It's just, that was funny to me.
That's pretty well. That's very well done. Yeah, pretty funny. Moments.
Yeah, I think the moment was we got Simon and Andrew, you know, just trying to make it through life, and Simon's willing to face, you know, his own people for working on the Sabbath.
Shabbat.
Whatever.
Not Israel.
Sounds like something work would say. Yeah,
Shazbak.
Yeah.
Oh my golly! No
just
offense
trying to you know, figure out a way. You know, they feel like their lives are pretty much over with right there, because they're gonna lose their livelihood, they're gonna lose the boat, they're gonna lose everything. And even in those kind of odds, even when his brother tells him, you know, I don't know what you think you're doing, he says, well, you know, desperate people do desperate things. So yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting moment. I just didn't have this opinion of these characters before, because Scripture doesn't lend itself to having the background. I think part of the thing is that every Jesus movie that has ever been conducted had to cram everything into a 2-hour window.
Yeah.
Maybe Ben-Hur was 3 hours, but
We still don't get
you had to cram everything really quick, and you had no way to flesh out any of these.
Chariot race, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You couldn't flesh out these
Right.
characters anymore. They were secondary characters in every Jesus movie. They're kind of the guys at the table. Oh, he's leaning in. I mean, it's like, who is that? You know, you barely even knew them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has been a lot. This, because of the medium that it's using, which is a TV show, 57-minute episodes over 8 episodes, gives you a whole lot more time to kind of flesh out the day-to-day. Develop these guys. So, you know, you kind of knew they were kind of rough, even if you knew the Scripture a little bit, that they were fishermen, and fishermen were kind of, you know, salt of the earth kind of guys. And, you know, Matthew, I was totally surprised with Matthew, because I did not see Matthew as like, you know, 5'10" or 5'9" kind of slight build guy. I just, for some reason in my head, I've always thought Matthew was, you know, being the first author of the New Testament, the Gospel, he's kind of an older, wiser guy. It just seemed like I had in my head, not not Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's I got a better idea of a tax collector from Zacchaeus than I ever did of Matthew in Scripture.
Yeah.
It just says he's a tax collector. It doesn't say he's a Weasley, guy, but he probably was because he was working for the Romans.
Outcast,
so,
yeah.
that was kind of a new thing.
I wonder too. I mean, you said it's interesting. I wonder if in the this isn't the moment I wanted to talk about, but I wonder if one of the reasons that other folks have never fleshed out the disciple this way is because they're afraid to do it. I mean, this is pretty risky,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're aiming for a Christian audience that has preconceived notions as
Knows
to
the story.
what the disciples are supposed to do, and so all of a sudden now, although you're being true to Scripture and you're getting all the Scripture in, you're adding a dimension to these characters that, wow. I mean, that's that's got to be pretty high risk as a storyteller too. I mean, you're trying to raise money to do this whole series and stuff. I think I'm struck a little bit by the gutsiness of it, which even as I think that was one of my takeaways reading with the character Matthew. I'm like, if they're wrong about this, good for them for trying, right? Good for them for adding a depth to this character, so because maybe we can understand the story a little bit more.
Well, in this particular case too, and it's super important for the biblical purists among us. These are not things that matter that they got wrong.
Right.
No,
There's
they're
Matthew
not.
5:4, 5:9. Who cares?
No.
Was he young or old?
Was he young or old? Really doesn't even matter that much who that guy was as he relates to Jesus is the important factor.
Who knew? They put him on a scale, and it was kind of just. I mean, it's just one of those strange. You're like, wow, what did they do there? So, no, that's good. No, I'm with you. My moment is I think one we mentioned earlier is that Nicodemus moment when they kind of, you religious dude, we got a problem in the red district or whatever it's called, red quarter, and we're going to go up.
Did they say scarlet?
No, red.
Is it red?
Red quarter.
Red quarter. Anyway, and he's going to go cast the demon out, so he takes two young guns with him, right? Because we're going to have a little, show these boys how to do it. Now let's make it a teaching moment, and let's go. And they get in there, and he is Nicodemus, and so he is the leader of leaders. He's respected, and he is over his head. I mean, that whole moment where we're not afraid of you. I'm thinking, how quick would you start backing out the door at that moment? Because again, it's part of the fun of the Nicodemus character, because obviously he is a searcher like everybody else and part of the chosen, and we know how his story kind of unfolds. But great way to introduce him, and a great way to put him in contact with that character that's destined to be Mary. And of course, if you're thinking ahead a little bit, you know what's going to happen with that. But still, at the same time, wow, to have that face to face with her when she's demon possessed, I thought.
And when he utters the statement, God Himself is the only one that could do something with that girl.
Yeah, at that moment, she's kind of written off. I mean, she's done. I thought, to me, that was the moment. I'm like, wow, that's a moment and a half. I mean, that well told, well crafted. Any other moments jump out before we?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I said this openly on this.
You just thought it.
Yeah, I don't know if it but sometimes I say things I don't remember.
You were going to give me $200.
It was Nicodemus, the academic, of after his encounter, he goes back and basically in front of all the students and other Pharisees, basically excusing his failure by saying that in this case there's just some people that aren't redeemable. They're too far gone, and that's how the organized church does things too.
It is. I mean, interesting enough too, because we foreshadow when you kind of move into the other episodes, but those guys that are with him, that's for Nicodemus again. That scene, that's a chink in his armor.
Right.
All of a sudden, the great Nicodemus, the wise, the powerful, Almighty Oz,
Teacher.
he can't. You pull that curtain back, pull that fancy robe back, and man, he couldn't do it. And the respect, I mean, ultimately as it unfolds, they respect his position, but their respect for him has changed. And it really starts in that scene and kind of rolls this thing forward. which I think is going to be an important part of Nicodemus' story as we kind of unpack this a little bit more. But yeah, pretty interesting. Any other moments?
The only other thing that kind of brought to light was the fact that the disciples, before Jesus calls them, might not necessarily like each other.
Yeah.
While I knew they were goof-ups, I didn't know that they might not like each other because, we see Simon and Andrew going to pay taxes to Matthew, and they're not liking, and I mean, Matthew doesn't trust him because he's come up with a scheme, and he's like, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to go to the Romans, and even his little guard with him, you don't want to go to Quintus because he's going to kill us both on the spot. No, I got to talk to him because these guys are rats. I mean, there's no trust there, and
Or to
again,
Richard's
not
point, these
thinking
guys are
that
going to screw
dynamic.
me over, and I'm going to get hammered
Right, then
for
I'm
it.
going to have to pay, and so
Yeah.
an interesting dynamic I never really gave thought to.
And I think it's cool how they take all those moments in what is now, because they've done the pilot, which was a Christmas story.
Right.
So, I mean, that's gone, right? We're not doing Christmas anymore. All of this they throw into, like this pot. These are the moments that we're going to spring an entire series out of.
Right.
Wow. What a way to stack that up. That's a little bit, I mean, that, again, great storytelling, risky storytelling, fun storytelling, very easy for folks who are comfortable with the parameters that we've often created at the church for telling stories to go, this is not going to be my series. Which it's not. It's not. I don't think it's a series for them. I mean, I think it's one of the series where you really want it to be stretched and want to dig a little bit deeper, and I think that's one of the things it does.
I'm curious as to how this, because you know the anchor points of the story as a longtime believer, dozens of times through the Gospels, obviously, how it plays without that background. I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things it does too is it forces people
To go back and
to
read.
go back and
Is that
read.
in there?
Is that there? Or they add that?
Because I
mean,
remember
what's there,
going,
what's not?
I knew she was demon possessed. She had 7 demons? Yeah, she had 7 demons in her. Not just one, 7.
Yeah. So,
Well, I think this takes the saint off of every one of those disciples.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We think of them as
The guys with
high
the
and
things over
holy
their
and
heads.
lifted up,
St. Peter, St. John.
and these guys are, basically dirt of the earth. So it's
Which intellectually, what you've
yeah,
always
you-
known
you-
intellectually.
You knew that, but how did they rise to?
You wash them up. a
They
little bit.
didn't really get that from their academic selves. They were basically first century guys that had walked with Jesus. So hence sainthood comes about, and then
they got the paper plates on their heads.
yeah, that puts you into a different
That's probably a good
stratosphere.
place to end.
We will end it there as we talked about the moments from I've called you by name. And so thanks for joining us. We would call you by name, but we don't know who's watching. So, but we look forward to seeing you next time here. And you said something?
Oh, so it's Bobby and Susie and
Angela. Start with the A.
We'll see you next time.
Tom and